Hi there, welcome to another episode of I'm Inconsistent and have no idea how to manage anything. I rarely talk about why I take so long between uploads, and usually just make a few jokes and get straight into the video, but I'm deviating from that formula today. The past month has been a bit, crazy due to my AC breaking twice, me applying for a new job that I really wanted, and getting rejected just about a week later, and a few other, projects I'm working on. Yeah, we'll go with that. But hopefully I'll be a little more consistent this time around. But enough of my psychotic ramblings about bullshit. You're here to hear about other people's bullshit from the D&D table. And I'm here to deliver. Welcome to part 2 of Toxic Table Plays Roulette with Who the DM Is. Turns out it's mostly Mary Sue and That Guy Squad. These long-ass titles never get old. This time around, we had 3 people from part 1. If you haven't read it yet, please do, as while it meanders because the campaign meandered, dude, the whole plot meandered. It does set the stage for this chapter. Trigger warning! Themes of incest, coercion, rap, and other sexual unpleasantness are in this chapter. Yes, sir of the Reddit, doth spilleth the tea. Why am I talking like this? Little did the narrator know, I'm the narrator. Little did the narrator know, he was a fucking idiot for committing to read the full trilogy. The cast, me, playing Trip, a tiefling bard, and one of my favorite characters to this day. Malady, the Mary Sue DM from the last story, now a young wizard descendant of a famous wizard and a student at the magic school. There's a magic school in D&D? I mean, kinda has to be. I don't know why I ask such stupid questions. Treff, the player from the last story, this time the DM. The fighter and Edgy were both invited, but the fighter found out he couldn't murder hobo a magic school and he left after the session 0, because being a murder hobo is somehow extremely important to every RP plot. Edgy wanted to make sure the campaign got traction before he joined. You all know my opinion on this. The setting was in the modern era, and in the first roleplay-heavy session, things seemed to go alright. It functioned as a session 0, so it was backstory time. For me, Trip was a rebel, a runaway who wanted to get away from his parents' conservative values. Being a tiefling, conservative values, quote-unquote, meant that his mother was a seductress demon, and his father was the high priest of her cult, so he was refusing their lifestyle of sinful orgies and depravity. That's more along the lines of devout, and doesn't quite fit the definition of conservative, but that's fine. Instead, he was clinging to his celibacy as a way to rebel against them. Now that's a conservative value. Keep in mind, I'm speaking from the textbook perspective, not the political one, and was now trying to make it big in music with his keytar while disguising himself sometimes as his own agent to book him in venues. Sweet! As a keytar player myself, I approve. After a brief roleplay of his actions, which included a little drug dealing, alright, we're going there today. This interaction is where we saw our first red flag. During the session, Malady was preparing for school to start and going through items that belonged to her missing father. She found a gem hidden somewhere, and it suddenly zoomed into her chest and became a voice in her head on a failed wisdom save. Her father was trapped in the gem, and said he'd serve as her guide while she grew as a wizard to try and find a way to free him. Immediately, Malady gets angry and tries to march the character out of the campaign. She doesn't want that to happen to her character and demanded that her motivation should be that he's missing and presumably dead. Not that he's suddenly inside her wanting to help her. The session ends as the two argue before I get a message from Treff. Dude, what do I do? Hey, OP, disgruntled players trying to leave, what do I do? Why the fuck are you calling me? I told him to just retcon it, because it's not worth the fight. It was a good idea, but he should probably get player approval for things like that before the campaign starts. He retcons the situation by converting it to being a bad dream. and that Malady wakes up to find no crystal where it was in the dream, but instead a stack of notes that might give her clues, if she can only learn the language in which they were written. From here, things went swimmingly, to be honest. For a while, a great deal of fun is had by all three of us, including a literal battle of the bands, where Trip won an enhanced guitar, an enchanted keytar that was made from the bones of a lich. How badass is that? Well, that certainly gives a new definition to stroking the ivory. That is probably the new worst thing I have ever written. However, it became clear after a few sessions that Malady had become somehow enamored with me. Not the character, but me, the player, and therefore the character by proxy. The same DM that was so upset with me before is now enamored with me. Meanwhile, Treff was fascinated by my character's inversion of the fundamentalist family trope in his background. There you go! Much better definition. And started building some uncomfortable plot elements around it. Treff also seemed to want to get revenge on Malady a little for how things went in the previous campaign she'd run, as well as her rejection of his first plot idea for her character, and was frustrated with her habit of trying to declare a roll was a success before rolling it. The turn left into cringe began. Yeah, this right here is a big problem in my point of view, because you're not supposed to hold grudges like this, particularly when you're DMing. As I've said before, the DM is meant to be on the player's side instead of working against them. And revenge from a campaign from the past is a good way to lose not only your target, but the respect of your fellow players along with them. But OP said we're getting into cringe territory, so put on your protective gear, viewers. Tripp didn't acknowledge anyone's attraction to him because his backstory sort of prohibited it. I mean, it is possible for celibate people to be romantically involved instead of intimately involved, if you catch my meaning. Just because he's ace doesn't mean he has to be arrow too, but if you want to make your character both arrow and ace, then cool, that's what we're going with. Instead, when given the chance, he starts doing things to annoy Malady to get her to lose interest, such as casting prestidigitation from outside the window when he sees her standing in class, presenting a subject, filling the room with heckling whispers. Instead, the players seem to respond to it as a form of flirting? Why does this look familiar? Meanwhile, DM forces an encounter with Tripp's mother for Tripp, wherein he refuses to come home. When the implied attempted incest causes both myself and Malady to balk, I'm pretty sure it's also causing me and my fellow viewers to balk as well. Welcome to Reddit, ladies and gentlemen. He drops the idea. Shortly after, a female goblin of the Rule 34 variety and not the traditional raw, shiny type, NPC begins to express interest in Tripp. This creates a scenario that is awful for my character as well as me as a player, and for us as readers and viewers. As while having an NPC and a PC competing with each other over a character who isn't interested is actually comedy gold, it stops being so when the DM's motivation is to try and get some pornographic content out of a chaste character, and the player's motivation is to spark an actual real-life romance. Fuck this. Fuck this. This enhanced an existing problem. As it was, DM had been giving Mallory very difficult roles, and it felt like he was getting revenge on her for her DMPC in the previous game. She never seemed to succeed, and constantly failed when trying to interfere with the Goblin Girl in any way. I could tell she had issues with approaching men in general as a person anyway, which is why she was using this method to try and get my attention. Having her fail rolls in the effort seemed to hit really close to home for her, and she becomes less interactive. So, was this the result you were hoping for, Treff? At the same time, Malady is engaging in some potentially dangerous behavior, by which I mean she's hoping to use roleplay as a medium of expressing repressed feelings she has towards people she might have an interest in, which is self-destructive to one's own self-esteem and can make other members at the table feel extremely uncomfortable. Grouped together with a sadistic DM, you've got a bottle of home-brewed toxicity here. This can only end in really good ways, right? Right? Gameplay became largely my character dodging advances, being involved in drug crimes, and getting high with the spirit of the Lich that materializes sometimes out of the Keytar. Yeah, a Lich ghost, not sure how that works. Well, if you have questions, I recommend bringing them to Dr. Crusher. She's the expert on this subject. I kept it humorous at first, but as I expressed my frustration through Trip doing things like blocking his mother's phone number, DM starts aggressively putting her into things, and suddenly the goblin girl, who happens to show up at Melody's place before Trip has to go there, drugs Trip. After some failed saves, she has sex with him. No fade to black by the DM, and reveals that originally his mother sent her to fix him, but she developed feelings the more she tried. That's rap. That's literally rap. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. You see this button? This one right here, yeah, this button, yeah, I really want to press it. At this point, my character is the star, and not because I played him like one. Instead, it was because the DM wanted porn and to express DM powers, and the only other PC had an actual thing for me in real life. To make matters worse, Goblin Girl wakes up the next morning visibly pregnant, pointing out that goblins reproduce quickly. In what universe? At this point, my well-planned chaste tiefling bard had been stalked, drugged, and rapped, and then forced into fatherhood. I didn't throw a fit, but I shoulda quit. You're a poet and you didn't even know it. I didn't throw a fit, but I shoulda quit. Why didn't you? Why didn't you stop it there? Why did you have to put me through this? Why did you have to put my viewers through this? Ignore the fact I'm putting myself and my viewers through this. This is on no fault on your part, but still. I found a way to zap myself forward in time to escape, hoping for a walk-off and then to quit. Instead, the portal pulls Melody with Trip in a dark future where the town has been destroyed, and the children of Trip had divided themselves into two factions. The one who sided with the Goblin Girl mother, and those who wanted nothing to do with her and thought their father was right to leave. Then, out of nowhere, DM says, well, I don't have anything beyond that. I guess I'm not quite the storyteller I'd hoped. Yeah, think? And he just ends the campaign. Fucking finally! It hit me that the entire campaign, fun as it had been at first, was about the DM smiting Melody with DM powers while generating some storyline porn. I kept the Trip character sheet and will definitely use him again if given the chance to drop in a level 3 bard somewhere, so long as a Lichbone Keytar is permitted as an arcane focus. Honestly, that's really badass. I'm not even gonna lie. Too bad somebody had to ruin it! I told them I'd let them know, as well as a couple of other people they hadn't met yet who I knew could roleplay well, when a campaign was ready. After all, I was the experienced DM of the group, and wanted to help them improve and understand what derailed their campaigns, and I thought the best way to do that would be to take my turn as the DM. I'd spent a lot of time with 5e books and observing games that use it, so it seemed like a good time to try. Oh, such hubris I did have.
Sheer fucking hubris.
Hubris that would be punished by the gods themselves in part 3. And that's where part 2 ends. Yay! I'm gonna go puke now.